Hi everyone, I'm Vito, the founder here at Atarim, and today I'm with Bob Dunn, BobWP. How are you, Bob?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking me. This is pretty exciting. I get to talk about something I don't normally get to talk about.
Well, this is really interesting for me as well because in all of these sessions, all of the ones that I've done so far, I've managed to capture the experience of the agency or the freelancer that has been using our system. But this one is gonna be really interesting because you've been rebranding your Do the Woo, your entire new website built with Web Dev Studios, which is one of the biggest agencies in our space. But today we're going to cover the client perspective, how you saw that for the first time as a client. And it's just an honor to do this with you specifically, Bob. So how about we start by you telling us a little bit about your journey with WordPress, how did BobWP become BobWP?
Okay, real quick. So I started using WordPress in 2007. And before that, I ran actually, this was towards the latter end of that, but a marketing design business for 17 years. So a lot of print design. Started back in 93. Then was looking for something basically to build the client sites. I was a designer, I was not a developer. And WordPress dropped in my lap, so I started playing around with it in 2007. And by 2008 or 9, I thought, well, this is ideal. I'm just going to, I can create actually good-looking sites without being a developer. And so I went ahead and played around with it, started a blog. 2010, decided it was time maybe for this business to make a shift. So we literally kind of shut down that side of things, all the design, the marketing, and I came up with the idea of BobWP.com, moving totally into WordPress. And that just, for the last, over a decade now, has transpired into, I did design sites for clients for several years. And then I also did coaching, training, all sorts of WordPress stuff. So I've kind of done it all except development.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then how did you get into the game of podcasting, which is really the main thing that you do right now?
Yeah, that was, I believe, 2014. Matt Medeiros kept poking at me to do a podcast. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have bandwidth for that. So I created this really funky one. I called it WP Breakdown because it was kind of a play on words because I thought, well, breaking down WordPress, but also having a breakdown. But it was a strange little podcast. I just repurposed content of what I was writing. And after a year, I thought, well, it just wasn't clicking. And so I stopped that one, said I'm giving myself a break till the perfect idea came along. And that's when in 2016, Do the Woo. And since then I've had and stopped. I bet about 7 or 8 podcasts.
Right. That's also 7 or 8 podcasts since Do the Woo?
Yeah. Since 2016, I started different ones. I had one on podcasting, one on monetizing, one on community. I had Do the Woo turned into, I actually changed it to WP E-commerce Show after about a year, and that went for about 150 episodes. And then I decided to bring Do the Woo back, stop that one, and so now Do the Woo is the mainstay.
So when I had an opportunity to meet you at WordCamp US, when it was still possible to to fly around and to see people in the real world, and I had a bit of a a fangirl kind of moment when I saw you going up the escalator there, because I was reading your stuff as an agency owner and I was listening to the shows. So it was really exciting to just kind of meet you in person. And I just want all I did is I just want to shake your hand, man. So since then we kind of became friends. You've been on our summit, and we even did like a live session at the a takeover the networking lounge. That was a really cool episode, and a really nice experience. And just staying in touch, with all the stuff that you're doing, that I'm doing. So it's been awesome, getting to know you, Bob. That's first of all. And then when you told me that that with the new rebrand and the new website that looks amazing, by the way, you had the opportunity of using Atarim as the collaboration system, and I thought that would be a really interesting piece of content to share with our users, because a lot of us, as agency owners, we kind of live in our own little bubble, right? We just do the work, we just provide the service, but not many times we get to hear the real experience from the client's point of view. But even more than that, I know that a lot of prospects or people that are kind of looking into our software, they have all kinds of concerns from the client coming in, leaving too much feedback, or not getting it, or just reverting back to sending them WhatsApp messages in the middle of the night. So we're gonna try and debunk some of these things here. So how about we start by telling us a little bit about the experience of rebranding the website? I know this is the first time that you had someone else build it for you instead of you doing it yourself. So what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, it was kind of okay. So Do the Woo has been around for about a year. It's just a little over a year now. It was last October is when it started. And prior to that, as I said, I've been in the, running a business for a long time. I think my first website I created was in the late 90s in HTML with Flash. It was the most horrifying thing you've ever seen in your life. I still have nightmares about it. But then I didn't do a lot of web design myself. I did little bits and pieces for clients. I was mostly into print design. And when WordPress came around, or when I discovered WordPress myself, that was, okay, wow, I can build sites for clients. So I did that for several years as I moved more into just WordPress and the BobWP brand for that decade or so. But when the opportunity came to me to do a site, and this was not going to be a simple, because I created the first site. I just, took a theme, kind of like I do, get the plugins. I really needed a couple things. I needed some outside perspective, and I needed talent, a lot more talent than I have in the development side of things. So it was like I'd never had anybody build a site for me in all that time. And I was a bit frozen. It was like, I have this opportunity. I really want to do it, but who the heck do I hire? What do I even do? I asked a couple of people. I thought this is really kind of pathetic for me, because it's like, how do I hire a web developer? I've read probably a billion articles. I've heard a billion people talk about this, and suddenly I had to do it. And I knew literally hundreds, if not thousands, of web developers. And it was, there was a moment where I was just kind of spinning a little bit, thinking, okay, I know what I want done is I want somebody that can take what I'm doing, the concept of what I'm doing, and do great things with it. I had no idea of the brand, the new logo, what I wanted it to look like. I had no idea of what I wanted the site to look like. I wanted to hand it over to somebody and have them give me their expertise. I wanted to use and abuse what they know, because that's why I was hiring them.
Okay, I love that. And I think that a lot of times when we're collaborating with clients, we expect them to give us a lot of these answers. And as you're saying, you wanted to relinquish control. You wanted them to take the whole thing, take full responsibility over from doing the logo to laying out the different pages, what it will be, it's going to be included. So how did that discovery flow happen with Web Dev Studios?
They have a great process. They have a questionnaire that you fill out, and then you actually get online. And I had brought up to them in a podcast where I actually had the developer and Brad Williams, I believe he's a CEO, or I don't know what his official title. He's a big boss. Let's call him the big boss there. And they said that, you gave us a lot of valuable information, even though you didn't come out with like, oh, I want it to look like this. So they, again, it's kind of throwing it in the hands of the agency. They had the ability through these, both a written questionnaire type of thing, and then an actual interview or a discussion online that we had, to pull out what I needed and what I was thinking about. And that was one of the things that fascinated me, was that, and I can't even step back to when I was doing sites, because this was such a different experience. I was thinking, wow, it's almost like this osmosis happened. Where did they pull out this, or when something would come along? So it was, they had it really down, and I was impressed. I mean, like I said, having not hired an agency and walked through it myself, and knowing my, how I did things when I was designing, it was like, wow, this is so streamlined. It's just moving right along. There's no hiccups along the way.
So you saw really the value of having a structured process that just takes you, or not even takes you, because I always tell our users that a lot of our systems and processes, they feel like the customer is being literally taken from one step to the next, instead of letting him fall into the next step, right? So it kind of like you slide in from one step to the next. And I think that this is the experience you're describing. You did the questionnaire, and then all of a sudden there was an interview to follow up on those things. Then all of a sudden there was a website. You didn't really needed to be moved from one stage to the next. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that is. And, and it was broken up into two stages, because first was, I had hired them to do the logo. So there was a rebranding, the colors and the logo. And then it was, moving into the web development part of it. But it was kind of encompassed all at the beginning in a sense, but then it was done in those two stages.
Right. So you got the branding done, and that was the one that was utilized throughout the entire new website.
Yeah, right. And that, gave them the lead on what the design would look like, and, how they would incorporate that.
So how did you handle the content? So you're a content guy. They came in mostly for the build and the design. So I'm thinking that you might have had a lot of say there, or you kind of had an idea of how to structure the content in a way that would make sense to you, especially because you already had a website before that. So how did you guys handle the content creation, gathering?
That was actually probably the easiest part, because a lot of the content was easily transferable. Right. So I didn't need to reinvent a lot of the content. There was maybe a little few tweaks, or, how I want to present it here. But I was, for me, there was the opportunity, and that was probably a lot different than a lot of projects, because I knew that, I could tweak things even when we get to a certain stage where they let me in and I can get in there and do any final edits. But there wasn't any major content thing, because I continued to create content on my site. As always, I was doing podcasts, blog posts, all this stuff that, we had to make sure everything was all, moved properly when the time came. But that wasn't so much of a huge process, just because of that reason that, like I said, there was very little changes in the actual content. Maybe the structure of it. What they did is I said, okay, the content itself is set. You make the content look cool. You present it in a way, and that's where they took some creative, license to actually present it to make it look a little bit more readable and just more visually appealing than what I had before.
That's awesome. So you guys went from basically the discovery straight up to seeing some kind of a design?
Yeah, I remember what happened is, and this is what's so funny, and this is where it kind of explains a lot of how I worked, is there was a lot, going back and forth, getting to the point, and they had come down with three homepage templates to work from. And fortunately, I'm the type of person, unlike a lot of people, I can look at it and think, some will look at it and say, oh, is it going to look exactly like this? And, it's just kind of the feel and the elements. And they said, what don't you like and what do you like about them? So I went through those three. They, just from what they discovered up to that point, they must have decided these were the three that would fit it best. But after saying what I liked and didn't like on it, I said, hey, to be honest with you, I feel like I'm going down the theme vortex or something again. It's like I said, I don't have any idea which of these three I like the best. I'll be totally honest with you. So at that point, I said, you tell me, knowing the process we've gone through, knowing what my site does, you make a recommendation.
Right.
And so they took it back, came back and recommended one. I said, let's do it. So that was, from that, they built out, obviously the entire site, but they took the elements in the branding and, incorporated them through. So that was, I wasn't going to get hung up on that homepage template, because I've been there picking out a theme, and I just wanted their opinion and what they thought would work best for what they foresee the project moving ahead.
Which again is under the same theme of maybe that is something that they shouldn't have done in the process. Not to critique Brad and his team with their workflow, but trying to kind of understand that the client sometimes doesn't know, or they just want to rely on the agency to just say, this one, this is what you
yeah. And what was interesting about that is I brought that up in the podcast I had, and they said that they, again, from the previous conversations, they kind of knew what I was looking for. They wanted to give me a choice, and that, I was able to give, okay, I don't like this, I do like this about it. But also I asked them, Christina, the developer, said she already had one picked out before she gave it to me to make as a suggestion. And so, I guess from a user side, it's kind of nice to know you have that. And it's kind of a catch-22, because it's nice to know you have those choices, to just three choices, but also nice to know that if you're still not quite sure, that you can be rest assured that they're going to recommend the best one.
So I remember when I was, in my early 20s, I was working at this guitar shop, right? And then you'd get some people coming into the guitar shop and wanting to buy a guitar. And some people knew exactly what they wanted, right? It's like, I want this one, and let me just try it out, and I need this amp and whatever. But some people were like, I don't know, I'm buying a guitar for my kid. I don't know what he needs. It was more of a budgetary type of thing. So as the salespeople, we were advised to pick three options, but know exactly which ones that the client should have, so that the other two options are ones that it's obvious that he's not going to pick. So he's making this false kind of, or this fake decision, really, when you're driving the conversation. Did you feel, I don't know if that was the case, but did you feel that maybe some of the other versions steered you in the one that they really wanted?
That's a good question. And I was at the point, I guess my mental, or my state of mind at that point was that I really, I did feel that, okay, they picked these three for a reason, and they're they're not going to keep throwing out themes or templates of homepages to me, based on the conversation up till then. So there was this preconceived trust I already had. Okay, they know one of these is the right one to use. So I think I think they probably they picked him knowing, kind of leading me into a certain thing. But, and if I would have came back and said, oh, they all suck or something, yeah, that would have been, and that would have been absolutely crazy. But yeah, I think that, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, they, and again, they may have, I don't know if I would have responded differently if they would have said, well, you might consider this one for these reasons. But, I guess the fact that I at least let them know, hey, here's a few things I don't like or do like about it. And it was really kind of, even that was a little bit fuzzy for me. It was like, yeah, well, I know how these things can change too.
Okay, that's cool. And so, you've heard of Atarim before, and we've even I think I've been on your podcast talking about this, but never really. I don't think you ever had the experience of actually touching the tools, as they say. So, when did this come about? What was the process there? How did you learn how to use it?
Yeah, well, they had mentioned, oh, we have Atarim as the to get the feedback and stuff for this particular phase of the process. And I was like, oh, cool. You mean Vito's product? Wow, that's cool. And I remember, way back whenever I probably still WP feedback is when I actually was inside of it. But I knew the basic concept. So it was like, okay, cool. This sounds like a plan. And they were they took me through the process of really explaining how it works. It wasn't just, hey, Bob, go in here, click here. You can leave a comment. We'll get back to you. They really explained that just leaving a comment, what happens to the comment after, I've made it, how responses are made by them, how we work it out. And so they were very thorough. And I think I appreciated that because one thing is I hadn't really used it as a user. I mean, I've always used it or looked at it as, hey, this is a cool product that Vito has, and I'm in here checking it out. And so, yeah, their process was pretty amazing. I mean, they, and I think it kind of goes back to they have this down pat, this process they go through with their clients, and we got online, probably it was a good half hour, maybe an hour, and they recorded it in case I need to go back and look at it as well. But yeah, they touched on every little aspect that they feel would be important for it to make it easier for me to leave feedback.
So did they also go into the depth of how to give feedback, how to give valuable feedback so that they can actually learn from it? Or was it more on the technical side of it?
That's a good question. And I should have watched the video before I could remember what we even, honestly, I'm sure they did. I can't say for sure, but also, they may have changed their approach a little bit with me, knowing who I am, right, and that I might, understand it a little bit moving into it. But I'm sure that was part of it, because I think everything they did was never just the technical part. And I that's what I noticed the most. And I think it's from my years of training it wasn't, they went beyond explaining the technical part in lots of different pieces along the way. Not just, this is not just how you do it, it's why you're doing this and how you can do it the right way. So specifically, I can't remember, but I'm sure that played into it.
And so what was your like, how did you dive into it? Were you given like a certain amount of days, or what was the frame like for you? Okay, Bob, now you know what to do, go for it.
I think that as I recall, we were, getting, because because the branding took longer, it ended up going from a 2-month project to a 3-month project. Right. So I was antsy to get things going. So that was one thing I think that played into it. They knew I was ready whenever they needed me to go into that next phase. And I do believe they said, if you could go through this by this time, they did set a time frame for me to go through it entirely, and which worked with me because I was ready to jump right into it. And in fact, I might have even started doing it sooner. And they said, the sooner you start putting them in, the sooner we can start working on those. So it wasn't like I'm going to sit there and wait till, if they gave me a 2 or 3 day period, I'm not going to wait till day 2 or 3. It was like, okay, I'm going to start doing this right away. And they definitely wanted, and they knew because we had set a new launch date, so they were working off that. So they said, in order for us to meet that new launch date, here's the time period, and I was good with that.
Okay, so then you went in, you started clicking the plus icon, sprinkling those stickers on the screen. What was your experience first time looking at this as a customer, or you told me an interesting story about you brought in your wife to kind of look at this as well, to look at the website and give her insight as well. So how did that look like?
It was cool. I mean, I'll put it that, and I'm a little bit more tech savvy than maybe some, clients and agency might have. But when I went in and, after they showed me, it was like, it was not even, okay, now what do I do again? It was like, bam, bam, bam. It was seamless for me. And it was, just going through and being able to look at the different, I went through it entirely desktop, and then I went through it mobile to catch anything like that. So personally, it was almost like, I don't want to say a no-brainer, but and I think I said this to you earlier, it was almost too easy. It's like, wow, this is easy. I just click here, I leave a comment. I know that I can do this, or I can share this, and that a screenshot is being taken. They told me everything that was happening along the way. So I was, rest assured it was covered. My wife, I remember I was on my laptop, and I said, you got to see this. This is pretty cool. And I brought up the site, and I said, so if I want to, say change this color here, which, I'm just using it as an example, I just click here and I go in and leave this, and it goes to them. And she just looked at it, and she's, not real tech savvy. And she said, wow, that's pretty cool. And she just said, that's easy. It's almost like I could do that too, Right. So it definitely was. It was it wasn't even a technical issue at that point. It was like another stage in the process for me that just progressively went smooth, like the rest of it had. And I was able to, get in there and give the feedback I wanted.
And so when you were after you finished your revision round and left all of the requests, how did they tackle them? How did you know that they are gonna complete those requests? What was the mindset after you did your part?
Well, I'm kind of a weird guy, that, Vito. And they explained, this is how it could go back and forth. And when it was completed, they'd showed me where I'd go in, and I'd set up my, in their account where I was notified by email for each one. So, cause I wanted to be on top of it, because again, we're approaching, the deadline. Right. So I was getting notices all the time. So they showed me the options of, you can get email notices, or you can go in and check here. The crazy thing was, I got in there, and my brain works like this. I'm always, 10 steps ahead, and I never am 10 steps behind. I'm thinking, was I supposed to push these complete? Because, when I'm done with something, it's like, okay, because I kept going back in, and it was really felt kind of strange, because I'd go back in and say, cool, great. I didn't know what else to say. Like, yeah, that's done. So I was just saying, cool, looks great, perfect, whatever. And then I started pushing the complete button, and because I thought, yeah, it's done. Why should we even have this here anymore? And, that was something that they normally do themselves, because they don't want to ask the user. And I understand that. They don't want to ask you to do another thing. Will you make sure and push it complete? Because maybe some people would say, well, is it complete? But I felt it was complete. So they said I was basically doing their job, and they thanked me for it. And I just started, after they said that, I was like, oh, I'm in there ready to hit complete on every one of them, because this is over with. I'm happy with it. So it was crazy Bob, getting in there and doing his own way. But they explained that. And in the beginning of, how we could do feedback back and forth. And it was just, here's what I see. I get a message back. Well, we fixed it. How's this look? Looks great. Done. Move on to the next one. And I look back at the crazy thing is I look back at when I was designing sites and all the screenshots and the emails and the videos we'd send and getting online together. And I thought, God, where were you, Vito, when I needed you,
I wish I had it, in my days. Amazing. So let's say from the time you were instructed to go in and do the feedback, to kind of leave your notes throughout the website. How long did it take them to just get it all done or finish the project completely?
It was, boy, I'm trying to think, when did the feedback get done? It might have been, oh man, I wish I could remember that. So all such a blur, because the feedback was getting close up to the launch date.
Yeah.
And I think they just built in enough once that feedback was done and I'd signed off on it all to make the actual migration, which was, I don't know, might have been a couple days that they were getting. I got online with the tech person and we talked about some things on that. And again, with my knowledge, I was able to probably give them a little bit more information than they'd normally get from a client. But so it was pretty much bam, 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 and I knew that they offer a 10-day support period.
Right.
Where, I can't go in back and start pinning things because obviously the site is live, but there's a point where, I knew that we'd be able to look at things once they go live and stuff. So I was comfortable with that. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. When things started rolling from that feedback, it was like, bam, 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 we're moving right along. We're close to launching here. And it all went exactly, as planned.
Brilliant. So that's amazing. So when you touched a little bit about your experience being when you were building websites yourself. So how did you do that? Like, what was the mindset back then, or for a lot of people that are watching us that are not utilizing our system just yet? What was the kind of frustrations or challenges that now as a customer you'd see that would be eliminated for you?
Oh man, where do I start? When I look at this process, and of course this was, a team. I had a team versus, myself when I would do it. But I look back, I was very I was very mishmash, and I think of the enormous amount of time. I mean, that feedback, I would, if I was, this isn't going to happen, but if I was starting up an agency now and having experience, so let me step back. I came from print world. In print world, and logo design and all that stuff, marketing. When I moved into online, that was quite a transition, quite a bit different. I mean, well, extremely different, especially as a designer, from the perspective of a designer, where you could do it on a computer, lay out this beautiful page, and now you get on a computer and it's like, what is going on here? This, I can't do anything. I think that looking back on that was how I always was. I was in print probably a lot longer than I was in web. And when I got into web, it was a very frustrating piece to me because of the design elements. And that's why I liked when themes started coming out, and you could put a theme in and you could do this and you could make things look better. And then you got page builders, everything started being able, for me, it was more accessible for me to design sites. So I think that the process, if I would have stayed in it, just from this experience, the process from the beginning, I had my own process, I would really walk through. One of the processes I had was more important to me than anything was making it very clear of what I can do or couldn't do in a project. That was even before somebody hired me, because I was limited on developer skills. I couldn't do a lot of customizations. And I was very upfront with them at the beginning of that and said, if you need this, you're going to either have to do without it, or you're going to have somebody else after I'm done. So, but as far as the feedback stuff, I remember those, like I said earlier, videos getting online hours and hours and hours and hours with clients going through things, okay, what was that you were talking about? What was that one little thing, oh, can you send me a screenshot? Here, let me send you a screenshot back. I mean, that you have massively, I thought if somebody could sit down and take your product and go through a, fairly simple site, let's say a 10-page website, and go through and give their feedback on it, might take them, if they really set their heart to it, maybe an hour, 2 hours, if it wasn't super complicated. And I think back on doing that via email and chats and Zooms and whatever else, and how many literally hours turns into days. So that is where one thing is having a process in place. And I had my process that probably worked fine for me and how I worked. But that feedback is a process that you were limited by the technology you had. And that's where what you have eliminates, and this isn't a big ad for you. This is the truth. I mean, this is experience. I never experienced having a client be able to, I send them something and say, hey, just go in there and do little Post-it note type of things. I mean, that's how I describe it. And, I'll give you, and you can approve of them. That didn't exist. And that would have been a huge, so that's the one thing that really sticks out in my head. How that feedback process was with them was probably what they gave me 2-3 days to go through it because of our timeline, where I would have had to build in back in those days, guy, okay, now we're at that point. What are we going to do here? A week or two?
Right. For each revision round, back and forth. So I remember when I was, I started in print as well. Like when I was even back in high school, I was more on the customer side. Building. I was designing flyers for my band and my friends' bands and all those kind of stuff. And then we would go and print them out at the print shop, right? So we were using fax to do something that was kind of similar. You would get the design faxed over to you. You'd annotate this, on the thing. Then you'd fax it over with those like little, circles marking the areas that needed changing, that didn't work well. So that's kind of just like the same experience. But when it goes to web, then you got to train the clients to get them to learn how to do the screenshots. A lot of them don't even know how to do that. And then you might get like a Word document with screenshots on it, and a whole bunch of back and forth just to pinpoint what exactly is the challenges. So I totally feel you there, Bob. So as we're wrapping this up, I wanted to ask you from your experience talking to pretty much everyone that is someone in our space, as well as your personal experience, what would be your number one piece of advice for agencies in the WordPress space?
Oh boy, I think after going through this experience is a solid process. Obviously, is invaluable. I mean, it's something, especially that discovery period they had to have somebody, whether you put that together yourself or have some help from somebody to do that, get that discovery, because that really did lay out a lot of stuff. I mean, even there was one point I asked something and it was outside the scope and I totally got it. Okay, yeah, that's outside the scope. We can always revisit it, or, if I figure I need that. So I think it's that discovery that kicks off that process, have that process solid. And I'll add one more tip, considered something like Atarim. I mean, it's really it's from a user used to be designer guy. The time that was saved, it was incredible. I mean, even my time, and I think, agency time is important, but boy, you want that client's time to be, it's valuable too. And that's important, that they're not spinning their wheels going back and forth.
Yeah. No, when it happens, they start procrastinate as well. And like you're saying, that the thing that should take an hour becomes like a week, 2 weeks projects instead of a task.
Yeah.
So Bob, how can people learn more about what you do, about Do the Woo, and about all the awesome stuff you do for our community?
Oh, cool. Well, probably best place, dothewoo.io is the site. You can find me on Twitter, probably Twitter at Do the Woo. And then, I'm on WooCommerce, Post Status, WordPress, Slack. Anybody can always reach out to me there. I'm either under Bob Dunn or BobWP. You can find me.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today, Bob. It's really interesting to hear this from your perspective and from a client's perspective. And I'm glad that we could have helped and be part of the rebuild. And I'll see you on your podcast hopefully soon.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, Vito.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. It was awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that was an easy discussion to have. It was kind of fun to talk about it again. I mean, from this perspective and stuff. So yeah, it's
So I wanted to ask you one more thing as we're wrapping up for 1 minute here, Bob. I don't know if it's up to you, but basically what I usually do at the end of at these sessions is I'll share what I have, and then we can just kind of like customize this to whatever we feel, because usually it's coming from the agency point of view, and it's basically like 10 to 30 second snippet that is used to promote this session.
okay.
So I'm gonna get off the screen, and then it's gonna be only you. You can make it your own, but this is kind of the frame of what I usually use.
Okay.
Cool. So I'm gonna get off. I'm still here. Just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
When you're ready for me to come back.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think I got some. So you want me just to record?
Yeah, just go.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, I'm Bob Dunn, known as BobWP with dothewoo.io. I was a designer for years, and recently, having not designed for years, I was able to be on the client side and work with an agency on a huge project, a rebrand and rebuild of Do the Woo. I had the opportunity to work with Atarim during the process, at the feedback process. And hey, listen to the story. It was a great experience. The whole experience with WebDev Studios. The whole experience with WebDev Studios. I'm going to start over. I've screwed up so many times there.
No problem. Go for it. Yeah. I messed up the first few seconds, so I know what you will.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Hey, I'm BobWP with dothewoo.io. I am not a agency owner, but I used to be a designer, and I'm chatting today with Vito about how I did the rebrand and rebuild of Do the Woo. Great conversation. I used Atarim during the process. I retained the Web Dev Studios. I'm sorry if I screwed that name up, but Web Dev Studios for the project. I can't even talk, Vito. I am just like, okay, one more time. Give me third time as a charm. Yeah. These are the things I can do conversation great. I get in this and okay, here we go. One more time. I'm going to get it this time.